I think we're all here, most of us, if not all of us, because we know that Na'i Aupuni is not going to be a good thing for our people. And we're here because we feel that the process of how it came to be has been very disassociated from the lahui, in the design and in the implementation, and I think we can validate that very easily. How many of you participated in choosing whether we wanted to have Act 195, Kanai Oluvalu, Olahui, Na'i Aupuni? Raise your hand. That's the evidence, The majority of our people have been disassociated from this process. And we're here to acknowledge those feelings and be sincere about it, that, many of us didn't know where Act 195 came from. And everything after that was just brand new news to us. We were never part of our own self-determination design. Therein lies the problem. So, this meeting is not about trying to argue the merits of participation in Na'i Aupuni. This meeting is not about trying to understand how we can go in and control this process in a way that's going to be pono for our lahui. Most of us believe that we will not be able to control this process, so we're very concerned about it. This meeting is not about rehashing Hawaiian history. Everybody here knows about the overthrow and the subsequent series of illegalities. We don't need to talk about that. We all know our history. What we want to do is we want to get into the meat of understanding Na'i Aupuni, how it's going to work, what the potential implications are, and also understanding how has it violated principles of self-determination. The highest standards of human rights have not been met. That's our belief, and that's why we're holding this Halawai. We also want to talk about what kind of things we can do as a lahui to regain control of our self-determination, and not let this process be forced upon us in ways that are utilizing fear and exclusion. And all of us know fear and exclusion has been a powerful tool for this process, and that's not pono for our people. So that's what this meeting is about. I just want to remind everybody to please be cautious. We don't want to revisit the history. We want to be real precise, understanding Na'i Aupuni, and also understanding the new DOI rules that just came out and how they are connected to Na'i Aupuni, how they're spliced in. Some people will argue that there are two separate things. They are, but they're really not. We understand politics and how it works. They're very much connected, and we're going to seek to try to bring more deeper understanding about that. Also want to remind people that we're going to be getting into some strategy and tactics, and we don't want to videotape that. And we were very clear with our video production team, Scotty Wong, and so I know that other people have bought their own cameras. We just want to ask, Kea'olu, please honor that. When we ask to turn the cameras off, let's turn the cameras off and honor that. We don't want to be broadcasting all of our ideas. With that said, we're also going to have some moderators, some kupuna, wahine, some aunties to help us keep order. So if anybody gets out of line, you're going to have to deal with the wahines. But we don't expect that to happen. We're all here for aloha. With that said, we want to move into our two facilitators, Helani and Ilima and Helani, to help us walk through the ground rules of facilitation agreements. How we interact with each other, how we engage. And so we're going to collectively come up with some rules that we're all going to honor through our collective design of the rules.
Lima, and I really want to mahalo everybody for coming out here today. I wanted to kind of just echo what Andre was saying, that another thing that we're not going to do here today is tell everybody exactly what we all got to do right now. So what we're here to provide, our objectives, is really great analysis, different kinds of analysis on the DOI rules, on the impacts of NAI as well as on Aloha Aina. And then we're going to look at the time frame for 6 months ahead and give us a way to look at that time frame in phases, and how at every phase we may need to regroup and re-strategize and reassess certain things. And then we're going to, our time to have discussion is going to be towards the end, where we're going to break into smaller groups so that more people can share their voice and their thoughts. And we're going to have facilitators and note takers in those small groups, and they're going to report back, and we're going to start building some collective community mana'o around this process and about ways forward for us as a lahui in resistance and in building our own nation. So that's what we're going to do today. And so in order for this to go well, we want to come up with group agreements of how we're going to engage with each other and how we're going to show aloha. You want to give maybe one specific how we can engage in kapu aloha here? Okay, open to listening. Okay, so let's focus on listening today. What are some other ones?
About keeping comments to about 2 minutes.
Okay, watching your time, yeah? Keeping comments kind of brief when we go, especially when we go into the breakout sessions. All of our time is so limited. So we want to make space for other people's voices too.
No bullying.
No bullying, okay? Can you be more specific? Okay, no bullying. How about no personal attacks? Maybe that could be one for bullying, yeah? No personal attacks. Attack the issue, not the person. Okay? And maybe one more. Are we good with these ones? Any last mana'o? Okay. What's that?
No speaking out of turn, let the person speak.
Okay, yeah. Let's not cut off people. So just basic rules of respect, yeah? Okay. Can we all agree to these? I'm gonna read them one more time. So our phones are on vibrate, kapu aloha, focus on listening, watching how much time you're taking when you talk, no bullying, no personal attacks, and not cutting off each other when people are talking, okay? Let's see, show of hands, agreement. Okay, looks pretty unanimous to me. So we will all hold each other accountable in this also as well, okay? All right. Okay.
Okay, aloha, I'm Halawai Sonora Pale. I wanted to mahalo the Lambert Ohana for the NAI in the back, the food. And please help yourself, that's for everybody. It's a long meeting, so we know that food helps us, and you know, if we get something in our stomach, we don't get so hoo-hoo. So help yourself to the food. We get juice, sandwiches, fruit in the back. Okay, mahalo.
Mahalo. Yep, just go as you please. And bathrooms are right through this hallway on the right as well, okay? So we are going to turn it over to Andre for a presentation. You ready? Yeah? For a presentation on sort of the history of Naniaupuni and some analysis on that history as well.
Okay. We just wanted to be able to go through a little bit of history. Not everybody knows this history of the evolution of FedRec and how we came to be where we are now with this nation building effort. We don't have a lot of time, so it's going to kind of be pretty short, not all the detail, but we just want to go over the basics. I just want to acknowledge that I'm a student here, so I had to juggle my homework with doing this, so any mistakes are purely my own. Any oversights, I'll own them, but it's pretty straightforward. So we'll just get right into it. So as you know, some of our values as a Aloha is mo'olelo, mo'opu'auhau, understanding history through our storytelling and connection, genealogical connection. So we're using this as a metaphor to guide us through this understanding of Naniaupuni. So most of us know Apology Bill, Public Law 103-150. 1993, President Clinton signs the bill where the United States apologizes to the people of Hawaii for their role in the it affirms that Hawaiian people have never directly relinquished their claims to their inherent sovereignty as a people over their national lands and calls for reconciliation. This important point we want to point out as we analyze the definitions and so some of the political definitions of certain terms. This is where I believe we see already a flaw, a failure in our self-determination as a people. Yeah, when they drafted the bill apologizing, they acknowledged that we never directly relinquished our claims to our inherent sovereignty. And inherent might sound good on the surface. It sounds like inalienable, but it's not. Yeah, we understand how inherent sovereignty has been framed in the context of U.S. law. We see clearly that it's United States Indian law. Yeah? Inherent sovereignty is really within the U.S. framework of tribal government. Yeah? A lot of our people, even some of our sovereignty people, don't know that. So when they apologize to us, they apologize that we never relinquished our right to be governed within the U.S. framework, basically. Yeah? So that's a problem. And then it calls for reconciliation. So they call for reconciliation, but as you see in their call, they've already set up the terms, inherent sovereignty. They've already put the box around us as they call for reconciliation. It's very important.
Mentioned in the middle part that it also said we didn't relinquish, our people did not relinquish our people as a land.
Right.
Neither.
It says that, yeah, a good point. So we didn't relinquish our claims over our national lands. That's important, and of course, we're all here because of that. I'm not going to go through the whole Akaka bill years. It's way too long and complex. But what we do need to know is that they tried for a very long time to force the Akaka bill on us, and many of us organized and worked together to fight federal recognition. They tried to force the Akaka bill on us with virtually no hearings, no free prior informed consent from our people, and ultimately a Akaka bill fails in Congress, largely, I believe, because of U.S. racism, where they didn't want to recognize us for anything. So a Akaka bill fails, and what happens is there's this effort to try to get something else. So if we can't get federal recognition, let's try and start with state recognition. Start smaller. But behind that process of state recognition, there's also an agenda. And we need to be real clear about that agenda. That agenda is that, as some of our old-time activists know, for many years, Office of Hawaiian Affairs has made efforts to settle ceded land claims. Oftentimes, most times those efforts, they failed. They could never settle the claims. The state would love to settle claims. And then one of the last ones that came out was a global settlement, which is across the board settle for everything. And they were never able to do that. But what has happened is the Office of Hawaiian Affairs has come to a legal analysis, to a conclusion that they cannot enter into a global settlement on ceded lands because they're a state agency. So they can't do it. But a Native Hawaiian entity could, and it doesn't have to be federally recognized. A state-recognized Hawaiian entity has the potential to enter into a global settlement. And so we believe that that's one of the underlying agendas. Not we believe, this is what we've been told from high-level insiders. Yeah? So Kako Bill fails, come out with Act 195. Many of us are not ready for Act 195. We don't know where it came from. And we're all caught off guard. We don't know. Who drafted Act 195? I think Sprinkwood Galuteria submitted it, but who was the brains behind it? Yeah? I don't know anybody who was. So Act 195 creates the NAI which is a native role, and there is another problem, yeah? They start off without our free prior informed consent to create a native tribal role that you have to sign up to be a part of, and the history of roles goes right back to Native Indian history, Indian law, yeah? And so it puts us in another box with this role. As I mentioned, no lahui consultation in the drafting, no community involvement. Key points of Act 195 is to recognize Native Hawaiians as the only indigenous Aboriginal population of Hawaii, and it reaffirms the state's desire to support the development of a reorganized Native Hawaiian government entity, and ultimately pointing towards federal recognition of Native Hawaiians. The statement of recognition states that the Native Hawaiian people are hereby recognized as the only indigenous Aboriginal Maori people of Hawaii. We already knew that. But what's interesting is basically the language reads that Act 195 already offers recognition on the state level. So when the entity is formed, recognition is already codified right here in this document. And if we understand that there's a potential to seek a global settlement, then it's all set up in advance, yeah, for even a state entity. Of course, our friend, maybe not Governor Abercrombie, figures importantly into this because he appoints the Kanai Olovalu commissioners. Who appoints them? Not us. Yeah? They're self-nominated and they're appointed by the governor, not the lahui, not the people who are going to be affected. Yeah? So it becomes very problematic for many of us. And then thus we see another layer of self-determination being infringed upon. We don't appoint the leadership. The agent of the illegal state appoints the leadership. Of course, shortly after, their job is to build a role, this tribal role. One of the things they do is launch this series of public notices. Native Hawaiians who choose to not be included in the role risk waiving their right and the right of their children and descendants to be legally, politically acknowledged as Native Hawaiians and to participate in the nation. Basically, they're telling us, if we don't get on the roll, you're going to be excluded generationally, not just you, your kids and their kids and their kids. Yeah? As Kaleko said, is that Aloha? Is that how we treat Ohana? So this really alienates, threatens, and angers the lahui. And then we see this as a result, though, of the failure for people to sign up. Yeah? For a long time, they were stuck at 15,000 names. Then they moved it on up with these kinds of things. People got scared. It's the truth. People got scared, and this motivated people to sign up. But as Kaleko always said, when they did the Kue petitions was Pono, Hawaiians were coming out of the valleys to sign up. We contrast that here, nobody wanted to sign up. Something's wrong. As Brother Skippy would say, he go by smell. If it smells bad, go upwind. And then, March 2014, OHA announces their nation-building plan, Ho'olulahui. Many of us are again, for the third or fourth time, caught off guard. Had no idea this was coming down the pipe. And we see a big press release with community leaders in the picture. And then we find out that it was a very exclusive, invite-only press release with select leaders to promote this agenda and make it look good. None of us had any idea that this was coming down the river. We find out that the nation-building plan was designed by OHA ad hoc committee. From what I understand, this ad hoc committee was comprised of 5 OHA employees. No community. Anybody in this room was on the ad hoc committee? So raise your hand. Oh, nobody. Doesn't sound like self-determination to me. So no community involvement, no representation from the community on the design of our future. Yet, ironically, OHA repeatedly asserts commitment to neutrality, and we're just here to facilitate. They even come out with a document. The Board of Trustees passes this document, votes for it. The OHA statement of commitment on governance. But if you read this document, nowhere does it say anything about neutrality. They were saying neutrality, but in the Palapala, the thing that holds them accountable, there's no statement of neutrality. What it says is, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs commits itself by facilitating and supporting this nation-building process. It says there in the governance, AHA would facilitate the opportunity for delegates to propose form, scope, and principles that would guide the governing entity. So what we find out through this so-called statement of commitment, their job is to facilitate. That's what they're saying. We're going to facilitate the nation building. Kind of sounded good until, I think this was on a Friday this came out. By Wednesday, OHA's in Washington, D.C., but not only OHA. We see members of NAI Roll Commission. So they're in D.C. after committing to be neutral and then facilitate, and this is what they understand facilitating to be. We're going to go and we're going to set up the back end so that it's there, so that when the nation starts rolling out, it can roll right into federal recognition. This picture is kind of funny. We didn't really know that they were there until Macy Hirono's office. They have their own Twitter account. They tweeted this picture, and we were like, those frickers, they stay in DC right now, who lied? But what's important to understand is we have OHA people, and we also have Kanai Olovalu people, and on the far right, we have a lady who's really been a mastermind, Norma Wong. She used to work for Waihe'e when he was governor. She's a political strategist. She's the one that strategized and brokered the $400 million that was used to clean up Kaho'olawe. So she has a lot of connections in D.C. So Kanai Olovalu contracts her as a consultant for about $500,000. Kanai Olovalu hires her for $500,000 to be their legal strategist. If their job is to build a role, just to build a role, they have no business in D.C., and they have no business hiring a political strategist. The job of building a role is right here in the community, and as we all saw, the community wasn't having it. Well, we see another layer of improper behavior or violation to self-determination. So, great backup response from the Hawaiian community. Very few people signing up. They're getting desperate. They're getting desperate. Millions of dollars have gone into this role and the numbers are very low. So they plan Act 77. Act 77 allows them to pull names from older Hawaiian registries. Of course, Manoa, the t-shirt list. I would argue, I'm comfortable saying this, most people got on Manoa because they just wanted a free t-shirt. Office of Hawaiian Affairs has their Hawaiian registry, which has a database, so ancestry verification. Oftentimes, the OHA registry was used for scholarships and grants, stuff like that. So they have their own database. And there's something else called Operation Ohana program. So Act 77 allows them to pull all these names into the dismal failure of the role and to buffer it with over 100,000 names. And I know for a fact that there was much debate within OHA and that some of the leaders within OHA felt that this was improper. But they weren't in control. In fact, I want to point out that OHA was kind of in control of some things, but not in control of other things. If you've been at some of the Kamawa meetings that OHA held a couple years ago, CEO Kamana'o Ponokrap has stated publicly multiple times that Kanai Olovalu mandated OHA to pay for Kanai Olovalu. They didn't have a choice. They had to fund Kanai Olovalu. And that doesn't sound like self-determination if the state's telling the trustees what they must do with trust funds. So we see another layer of violation here. So Act 77 pulls all these names in. And there's some people who want to challenge it legally. Is there a violation of confidentiality? Is there a violation of free prior consent? Anything. And there's an analysis that comes out that, well, you can opt out, so you're not really being violated. You can opt out. Highest principles of self-determination should be to opt in, not opt out. Yeah. I think we can all agree on that. Shortly after, OHA has this idea that to bring credibility to this failing nation-building process that nobody's signing up for, let's bring in the Hawaiian Royal Societies. Yeah, these old kingdom societies that have a long history going back to the kingdom, with the idea that they'll bring some prestige to this process and that it might motivate people to trust and get involved. And right away, it blows up in their face. The Uncle Layton seal right here, acknowledge him. Royal Order of Kamehameha rejects it, the consortium, and says, we don't want to be a part of this because we are for the restoration of our kingdom and our independence as a people. Royal Order, in a way, sets the tone, and after a lot of debate, hooky amongst the different societies, what ends up happening is not a single society steps forward to take this kuleana. Not the Ka'ahumanu Society, not Lunalilo Homes Trust, none of them. They don't touch it. They don't want to commit their trust to taking the trust that they manage to enter into this kuleana. So they say no. What ends up happening is some of the leaders from these societies, individuals, step forward and say, basically, we'll do it. So really, Naiapuni is the brainchild of OHA. In a way, it's the failed brainchild of OHA to bring prestige and credibility to this process. And it just is left with, we thought it was 4, we found out it was 5. Some of you were there, I testified at an OHA meeting. I asked the trustees, who are these 4 people you're going to give $2.8 million to? Who are they? Can you tell us who they are? OHA's not even able to say who the names are. We give $2.8 million, and at the board table, they can't even tell us their names. So I really pissed them off when I tell them, you should give the money to me, Kaleko, Skippy, and Dexter, at least you know us. Everybody now. Neg-ea. So, what happens is these individuals emerge. OHA has to, at this point, OHA must go along with the plan. There's no other options. So they fund them $2.8 million, and what we're hearing now is they're going to give them another $500,000 if they haven't already. And one of the key things I think is really important is one of the members of this NAI is the wife of former OHA executive CEO Manoa, who is currently the executive director of Keawekane-Stafford. So this thing is, sorry, not Keawekane-Stafford, Keawekane-Stafford. Manoa leaves OHA, becomes the executive director of Keawekane-Stafford. Now his wife is involved in Keawekane. So we have this kind of incestuous conflict. I remember approaching one of the trustees and I say, isn't that a problem? Don't you think there's a conflict of interest there? And the answer that I got was, well, Pauline's not like Clyde. She's much more responsible. So, sorry we got a lot of text here, but basically, kind of want to wrap this up as I talked about, throughout this whole genealogy of nation building, really going back to 2000 with the formation of Bill, we've never really had, they never strive for the highest principles of inclusion. Yeah? Self-determination is a core principle in international law that says that all peoples have the right to freely determine their political status, and it specifically includes independence. It cannot be initiated, controlled, or monitored by the occupying state. All people have the right to self-determination, to freely determine their political status, and pursue economic, social, cultural development. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 15, states that everyone has the right to a nationality, and no one should arbitrarily be deprived of that or denied the right to even change nationality. What's very interesting, as I close out, is if you look at the Department of Interior rules that just came out the other day, they affirm that the rules were made in accordance with the United States standards of self-determination. We got multiple political definitions happening here. But this language comes from the UN DRIP, which is seen, I think, universally as some of the highest standards of self-determination coming from the international level. Collective indigenous peoples have put these standards together. What's interesting to me is that DOI is saying we're doing it in accordance with United States standards of self-determination. Act 195 says, Act 195 references the UN DRIP, these higher principles. So we have another layer, I think, of sort of disconnected conflict, yeah? I called over to the Department of Interior last week and asked them, what are the U.S. Standards of self-determination? Where do they come from? And what I was told was, well, we don't really have anything specifically for Hawaiians, so we kind of got to draw from Indian law. So, to summarize, throughout this whole process, this genealogy of nation building and stuff, we can see clearly, there's no doubt in my mind, and I believe hopefully most of you or all of you agree, principles of self-determination have been violated, have not been met in the least. There's never been a neutral process. State recognition is going to happen even if federal recognition fails. And we see that there's an underlying agenda to settle Hawaiian claims over national lands. That claim that Antinani pointed out, we've never acquiesced our claim over national lands, is about to happen this way if the sort of the backdoor dealings happen for a global settlement. Federal recognition threatens international claims to independence. When the DOI was here, Department of Justice Attorney in Nanakuli was here, I asked him, would federal recognition preclude with independence? He said, I can't answer that. I asked Professor Chang to look at Indian law. U.S. Code 25, Section 371 basically says, no native tribes shall seek independence. The Constitution, the United States Constitution is self-preserving, set up to never cede territory back. So it could never be recognized as an independent country through U.S. law. It's set up to prevent that. What we believe is you have a corrupt process, you will end up with a corrupt outcome. Because of all of this history, many of us have chosen that participation is unprincipled, that we just can't muster up the willingness to participate in something that's so rotten. Yeah? I believe you cannot make a good meal if you're starting with rotten food. We believe that participation, even by our independence friends and allies, they will not get in. They will not be able to control this thing. It's going to be set up to be controlled by the people who designed it, and that participation will only serve to validate and legitimize the outcome. Mahalo nui. And we're running behind schedule. If we could do it, we get plenty of food, please go eat, people. Next on our agenda is
A different process.
well, we're gonna get to that. But if I could call up at this time. At this time, we're going to call up retired professor of international law, expert in human rights and self-determination, longtime friend to Hawaiians. I met her through working with our revered Kekuni Blaisdell, good friend to Kekuni, Maivan Lam. And we're also going to have our brother, Master Blaster, Kalekoa Ka'eo, to sit as a respondent to her. So she's going to share with us some manao about self-determination principles and some of the risks that come into play through participation. Kalekoa will engage and respond to some of her manao.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you very much, Andre, and organizers for inviting me to participate in this very important and noble endeavor. I am so glad to be sitting again, as I used to when I lived here all year round, in a room full of warriors for independence. I was asked to discuss with you how NAI Aupuni process, the NAI Aupuni process impacts your rights under international law. So I will do that. I've thought about it very, very carefully, and because most people are not that familiar with international law, it can be confusing. So instead of speaking about it ad lib, I feel that to get the legal details out correctly, I had better read the text that I prepared. Okay? All right, so before I would start discussing the law, I would like to be able to say that, generally speaking, countries that have gained their independence do so not through through law, but through a long and committed struggle based on a shared and compelling vision of their history, values, and hope for a future, as opposed to the vision of the foreign oppressor. In this case, I think it is the vision of Aloha Aina versus the vision of imperialistic capitalism. Now, having said that, I will also admit that legal tools can have a bearing on self-determination struggles. They can both help and hinder those struggles. So I will first start with the international law right of self-determination, because you are entitled to that. And I will discuss the 3 UN bodies, the 3 primary UN bodies that have responsibility to assure that that right is not violated. The venues for redress may vary from indigenous case to indigenous case, and so I'm only talking about the Hawaii case here. In your case, I judge the primary UN bodies that should be involved or could be involved, some to a great extent, some to a lesser extent, are first of all the Decolonization Committee, secondly the Human Rights Council, and thirdly the Security Council. Let me explain what each of these 3 bodies do. The UN Decolonization Committee in New York processes decolonization matters for the General Assembly, where all states have 1 vote only, as opposed to the Security Council, which is composed of 5 permanent members who each hold a veto, and rotating in and out, some members representing the 5 geographical regions. So the General Assembly is where every single state is represented and none has a veto. Now, the principle of self-determination was talked about in political circles for several decades, but the first time that it was expressed as a right, a specific right, was in 1960 when the UN General Assembly adopted the Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples. It opens with these now classic words, quote, "All peoples have the right of self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development." The General Assembly on the very next day passed a companion resolution to further clarify this right. It said unambiguously that all colonies possess this right of self-determination. Whether the 1945 UN Charter called these colonies non-self-governing territories administered by their colonizers until independence, or trust territories overseen by the UN itself. The resolution further specified that these 2 categories of colonies are to be merged in terms of the right of self-determination, and the peoples of these colonies, in exercising their right of self-determination, may choose one of these outcomes. 1, independence. 2, free association with another state, which can be reversed. 3, integration with a particular state. Very many colonies, in fact, exercised this right soon after it was declared in 1960, and most chose independence. Several island countries, including Tahiti, Kanaki, Guam, and Puerto Rico, have not yet exercised their right and remain on the committee's list or agenda. The reason they have not yet exercised their right is because their colonizers, otherwise now called administering powers, have interfered with their exercise of their right. But every year, these countries that remain on the list show up at the UN, report on the violations, seek redress, And it's a very important event because that's your chance to lay out in front of the world, right, why you should be decolonized or in which way the administering power is violating its obligations under the Charter. What is not generally known is that in 1945, the US itself placed Hawaii on the list of non-self-governing territories. In other words, in one of the two categories of colonies. And in doing so, it automatically agreed to become the administering power of Hawaii under rules set out in Chapter 11 of UN Charter, which, among other things, requires the administering power to, quote, recognize the principle that the interests of the inhabitants of these territories are paramount and accept as a sacred trust the obligation to promote to the utmost the welfare of the inhabitants. Do you believe the United States has fulfilled this obligation?
It's not Act 195?
Right. Now, that was in 1945, and Hawaii remained on that list of territories to be administered by their colonizers until they chose their own fate, so to speak. Because the charter did not employ the word independence in the Chapter 11 that treats of non-self-governing territories, and the reason it didn't was because in 1945, the states that controlled the UN were the colonizers themselves, okay? But after the Second World War, when more and more third world countries became independent, they objected to the omission of independence in Chapter 11, and they set about to correct that through the 1960 Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples, all right? Now, they did that in 1960, so between 45 and 60, 1945 and 1960, it was somewhat ambiguous whether territories on that list of non-self-governing territories had full self-determination, i.e. including independence, or something short of that. The 1960 Declaration removed that ambiguity completely and fully. Now, declarations like that take years to prepare. So, it was in the pipeline at the UN for a long time before it actually was finalized and declared to be the law. The US knew that this was coming down the pipeline, so what do you think it did? It organized in 1959 a fraudulent statehood referendum in Hawaii in which the majority cast their votes for statehood. Right after that, the US gleefully represented to the UN that Hawaii had exercised its self-determination, chosen integration with the US, and needed to be removed from the list of non-self-governing territories. The UN complied to its great shame. Basically because it really did not do the investigation necessary. Now, the 1959 statehood referendum, we can establish quite easily, was fraudulent on two main counts. First, the eligibility to vote on this question was overly broad, as recent arrivals to Hawaii, primarily from the US, were allowed to vote on a matter that did not historically concern them at all. Secondly, the options on the ballot were overly narrow. You could check the accept statehood box, or you could check the remain a territory box. What was missing? The independence box, obviously. So, wrong suffrage, wrong questions, fraudulent vote. Okay? And that needs to be corrected. The world does not know this enough. That needs to be corrected. And the venue where that needs to be corrected is the Decolonization Committee, which was set up after the 1960 Declaration on Independence to oversee independent matters. Okay? Now, the second body of the UN, which I believe may be helpful for you to activate on your behalf is the Human Rights Council in Geneva. The Human Rights Council in Geneva receives reports on and assesses UN member states' compliance with human rights instruments, including the 2007 United Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the acronym of which is sort of funny. It's UNDRIP, okay, United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is long, so I might refer to UNDRIP, and that means this. All right. Now, UNDRIP, unlike the Declaration on Independence, which basically grants the self-determination right to those who had been deprived of it, right? The UN Human Rights Council, acting under the same self-determination wording that is included in the UNDRIP of 2007, that UNDRIP is only set up for the protection of Kanaka Maoli, whereas the decolonization avenue should include all those who were harmed when the US turned Hawaii into a colony. Okay, so it would include non-ethnic Hawaiian nationals of the kingdom when it ended, when the Queen was overthrown in 1893. So there are two different groups of people exercising self-determination. Okay, now, why does the UNDRIP target indigenous peoples for this protection? Because of the incredible activism that was growing globally and that was beginning to influence non-indigenous peoples also to realize that the modern world was posing itself as in terrible danger to indigenous societies, institutions, cultures, and resources, and that these must be protected against the ravages of dominant societies. So, in a sense, UNDRIP actually is there to honor what many of us call indigeneity. And indigeneity, in my view, is expressed here in Hawaii as Aloha Aina. In other words, it's not just the protection of an ethnic group, it's the protection of the indigenous people's special relationship to their lands. A relation of respect as opposed to exploitation and devastation. Okay? So, it is, in my view, up to indigenous peoples, therefore, the Kanaka Maoli in this case, to vigorously assert the provisions of UNDRIP as norms to be followed in as many fora as you appear in. State, church, international. In other words, this is now a norm, meaning a moral virtue that the international community is supposed to uphold. Just a footnote. The US opposed this declaration during the 30 years that it was negotiated in Geneva for obvious reasons, because it did not want to, in any way, shape, or form, allow the indigenous peoples that it controls, right, to throw off the shackle of control. Okay. However, when Obama became president, he not immediately, he took his own sweet time, did sign the declaration that previous administrations had consistently and vehemently opposed. However, don't be fooled by that. What he said when he signed the declaration, which has, right up front, indigenous peoples have the right to self-determination, whereby they freely pursue their political status, economic, social, cultural. You know, the exact same wording. Instead of saying all peoples, it simply says indigenous peoples. He had the gall to say that he was now signing this declaration because at last the international community was catching up to the wonderful way in which the US relates to its indigenous peoples. Okay, so now there's a trick in that. It means we don't have to change anything we do because we interpret this to be just about rising to the high standard that we already have. Okay, so when they quote, UNDRIP to you, you say yes, but here's the interpretation of UNDRIP that the world generally accepts, not your interpretation, okay? Now, the last UN body in which you may, that may, and I put many lines under the may, concern itself with the harm the US has done here is the Security Council. And the reason I say may and talk about it last is because it is also, in my view, the most improbable avenue from which to get relief for the simple reason that the US holds a veto in that Security Council, okay? So anything that advantages the nationals of the kingdom or the Kanaka Maoli, but goes against the interests of the US as expressed by its government is obviously not going to receive the support of the US. And all it has to do is cast a veto and the issue is dead. However, the Security Council is in charge of security matters, which includes matters of military occupation, right? To the extent that arguably there was a military occupation, at least in 1893, I see no harm in bringing up that issue to the Security Council, not because you're going to get any relief, not because they're even going to schedule a hearing on it, but because it's good publicity if you involve the press. Okay? So I view these three approaches as potentially productive in tandem, not in the alternative. Now, to illustrate why the Security Council is, unless they change it, which is, perhaps not in my lifetime, but many countries are trying to get rid of the veto, all right? And that would then change the situation, but we'll leave it at that. I have to end now. Okay, fine. Yes. And now I want to talk about the impact of this, because you do have all these rights, and all these potential, you do have the potential to assert all these rights, right? And convince an important section of the world to support you. But if you sign on, or are believed to have signed on by the world community to a project document that integrates you with the US, then you have chosen integration with another state as opposed to independence. And if they read it that way, they will not interfere in the internal affairs of a member state. So that's the problem. Your assent must never be given if you wish to retain your option of independence. Your assent to integration is your most powerful tool, legally speaking. Now, so that's if you assent to be recognized, you assent to be integrated, and that is very, very dangerous to your international law rights. But I would like to end with this. It is not only assenting to recognition by the federal government that is dangerous. It is the mere fact that you allow a non-representative, elitist, oppressor, sponsored government to even come into existence. That alone, whether it gets recognition or not from the federal government, is already extremely dangerous, because the US, whether it recognizes you or not, will act as if this is truly your government and decide all matters through the government. And the state will do likewise, and they will encourage corporations to negotiate directly with that government to destroy your resources. And then as this practice piles up, the international community itself will say, well, you have not formally consented, but you have in practice consented because your government, represents you. So that's very dangerous. Thank you.
E tō puatani e ata mauri ola. E ola hoki o mauri ola. E ola ia oe tāni tūnelona. Oia e ono. O ke e kāni hua vai a kua kena. O kāni nā ka vai o uia e o ka huri o ka uho no pai ki au o ka mana.
O he aululu at pu. O piha. O piha piha. O piha u. O piha. O piha e. O piha u. O te toko anua paakalan. O leva kea. Ya kuli po kapo. Po. Ano ai vilina me ke aloha. Aloha. Aloha me o kalei kua ka eo. E keki papa no ke ia. No ka moko puni o Maui. Maui a kama ka malala walu. Nui ko maha le ka poe nane ho keri nei. A malama nei ki a papahana. Andre ma, ili ma. Shane. Healani. Poe apau. Mahalo nui au ko apau. No ke ala kai ana. Ka ho'olala ana. Ke kahe ana mai, ya kaku apau, ke ahi, no ka noho liki ana, ke kuka ana, ka ho'olo kahi ana, ano ke kuhe ana no ka pona o ka aina, aloha. Aloha, aina oia io! And I like to really mahalo those all put their hands and brains and hearts together to make this day happen. I also like to thank NAI Aupuni. As I say, without a Pharaoh, there would be no Moses. To fight against the oppressor, you must have the oppressor. We understand that. And so tonight I come to share. And first, I'm going to put my two things together. I'm going to respond and then might talk, but I'm going to put it all together. And I myself, I have no legal background. I'm no lawyer. I'm a storyteller. So I respect those who have those minds. And that's why I listen. Because the most important element in this struggle is our education. And our willingness to listen. Listen to those who know. Because I tell you right now, I don't know this stuff. I learn. I listen. And when I listen, I let my na'au. As the great John Cham said, do your homework, do your homework, do your homework. And this is what this is about. Malcolm X said, the greatest mistake is organizing a sleeping people. I repeat, the greatest mistake is organizing a sleeping people. You have to first wake them up to the heritage, to the humanity. Then you so I'm mahalo what the state of Hawaii has done. I'm mahalo Abercrombie and Edith what they have done. Because you see the response that has come from our community. See, these are good deeds. I don't see these are bad days at all. Because to go to the light, they say, you gotta come out of the darkness. And I see our people walking into the light, leaving the darkness. And Kupuna had that song. That's why I use this word, Aloha, Aina, Oia, Ina. A famous melody from its day. When they fought, our people fought, organized against annexation. Ku apayo, no kapono, o ka Aina. Ku apayo, stand and fight for what? No kapono o ka Aina. That's the opening lines of that song. Pau kapo. Everybody say pau kapo. Wow kapo. Darkness is over. We have woken up in enlightenment. You see, that's the key. That's the key. When you're in the dark, you get manipulated. You guess where you want to go. You know why you say, ha ha, Eli Kalima. You just guessing what's there. But see, once the light comes on, you start to see what's there. You know what to dodge. You know how to move around the corner. You know where you want to go. See, that's the power of the owl. That's what Hawaii said, ho'o na awao. Ho'o na awao, to educate ourselves. To me, that is the key. So first, I listen, I learn. And I understand. The United Nations for me is something far away. But I try to speak to our people. I try to interpret as much as I can. And I know this exactly. 1945, yes, Hawaii was on the list of non-self-governing territories. I don't know how the hell we got on that list. But then you start to wonder, why the hell was Hawaii put on the list? If everything was all nice and legal back in 1898, you see, you don't need to put Hawaii on the list. But you see, there is the evidence. Everything wasn't all nice and neat in 1898. As they say, you know, the Mokole still get doodle on top. The smell's still lingering. So they gotta do something, you see, because our people are waking up. We're talking the story, we're listening, we're reading. Hey, there was injustice in 1898. Hey, when people say, what they call, we had an illegal annexation. I say, bullshit. We never even had an annexation. You can't make something illegal that wasn't there. You gotta understand how we use our words to understand. There was no annexation. I mean, there was a resolution. There was no treaty of annexation. So let's be clear. So when we talk about actions of the United Nations, international law, see, this is how we fit into this whole question. So we cannot just look at the state of Hawaii and go, oh, thank you, Governor Abercrombie, for giving us Act 195. Because the hell, this is not no state. Pilikia. See, the state, they just the pimps in this whole situation. That's all they are. But you see, you know how pimps work, eh? They never make the money. Off of who? Who they pimp out. And they confuse those who they pimp out to think you do it willingly. And I'm supposed to do that. That's, you know, you got my best interest in hand. But see, one day when you realize that that's a pimp, you treat them like a pimp. When you want to be free, you realize that pimp had never, from the very beginning, had your best interest at hand. And so that's why for me, when I look at this, to me it's a very simple question. I don't look at this as a very complicated thing at all. You know, Audre Lorde has that famous quote that I use all the time. I say, for the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. For the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. So whether I'm looking at the state law or I'm looking at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and their role, and let me just, before I forget, you gotta remember that quote. As was brought by Andre. You know the day when they gave $9 million to NAI and DOI? That day. Many of us were there on behalf of Mauna Kea on that day. And we were there to ask for support from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs to support the protectors on the mountain. No kapono, no Aina. And the Office of Hawaiian Affairs said, well, we cannot really provide support. It's going to screw up our negotiations. Who the hell told them to give in the first to negotiate on our behalf? They could not even give us 25 cents. I want you guys to remember this. On the day when Mauna Kea was asking for support, brother was there with me, our guy, he knows. They could not even provide us $1 to support us. And they gave $2.9 million to NAI and DOI that same day. So if you are confused on who are your friends and who believes in Aloha Aina, there is really no confusion. You see, that's the point. And you got to wonder the question. So when they play, oh, somehow we are on the same side. No, we're not. Let's be clear. Somebody's talking revenues. Somebody's talking negotiations. Some of our people are saying we're going to do whatever it takes, but anything is necessary to take back what is ours, our Savior. And that's why when you open up with your life, long, committed, struggle. If you look at in world history, again, I'm no legal scholar, but I can look at world history. And those people that have freed themselves chains of the oppressors. Have those that have been willing to struggle and do whatever it takes. If it means getting arrested, we get arrested. If it means we need to get in there and stand and do whatever it takes, we do whatever it takes. So that's what it's going to take. See, that's the point. Because if you stand there thinking, well, the Office of Foreign Affairs, and maybe the governor, and maybe the legislature, and maybe even Obama, maybe the DOI is going to come help us. Brothers and sisters, I gave a nice island between Maui and Halawai and Usali. History has taught us it's only by struggle. And let me add to this struggle. And this is where I'm happy I see my brothers and sisters from NAI and DOI here. And I've said this many times. Only get one canoe. Only get one canoe. That's it. The job of the oppressor is to make us think. Get multiple canoes. The job of the oppressor, in fact, is to disunify our people. I want you guys to remember this. The job of the state of Hawaii and the feds and the DOI and the U.S. Navy and the military regime and Monsanto, whoever they may be, the TMT, is to disunify our people. And they will use any means to disunify us. Because if they disunify us, we see our struggle weakens. But see, that's the key. It also tells you the answer. That we must stay committed in unifying. I want to just throw this out. I know, without a doubt, what will happen to NAI and DOI. I know it's a setup. I know enough history. Hawaii no special people that are going to escape history. All you got to do is study history. But I ask those who are in NAI and DOI, when it is revealed to you, this is a setup to the DOI, I ask, and I beg, I know my begging and crying, and I ask that you come and rejoin us. Because the truth is, the only way we're going to get Mauna Kea back, get Halawai back, gain control of our waters, gain control of our resources, gain control of our education, is a unified and educated people. That's it. That is what they feel. This is what they feel. What they feel the most is because they know once you are educated and once we unify, we will struggle. And we will do whatever is necessary to take us where we need to go. See, that's why for me, I harbor no ill feelings to whoever may be on the other side. Because, see, I already understand you're not on the other side. And I preach unity. And I can tell you, Hawaiians will never unify by holding the hand of the governor. Hawaiians will never unify by saying, oh, the legislature has the right idea. When you guys remember, it's very simple. So unity. Oh, I better get my stuff. I see that sign is coming up already. I went to number 1. I got 4 more to go through. So, Halawai. Second thing about Aloha Aina. It's an invoked word for many people today. And that's good. But part of it, I always say there's a false consciousness about the word Aloha Aina. See, Aloha Aina is not just about, oh, I'm going to pick up the rubbish over there. Stop them from spraying things over there. Aloha Aina is the core of our identity. As I was saying, wherever we walk upon this land, we walk upon our ancestors. Whatever food we eat from this land, we eat of our ancestors. See, that's Aloha Aina. That is us. The land is us. The job of the oppressor and the dominant is to make us think, oh, we are somehow separate from it. And you can give us some money and some payment, maybe some rental, ooh, maybe some entitlements. That's the confusion. But Aloha Aina is what's said. But the great speakers themselves, you want to go to Navahi, you want to talk wise, you want to talk Kalao Kalani, look and understand what was Hui Aloha Aina's purpose. Wasn't picking up rubbish. Was to regain control of the air o Aina, not the air of the Constitution, not the air of this act or this bill, but the air o Aina. So I always say, when I look and I frame this, it's very easy for me. This is Aloha Aina versus NAI Puni. But I understand what NAI Puni is. It's Aloha Aina versus the state of Hawaii. It's Aloha Aina versus the U.S. military. It's Aloha Aina versus the TNT builders. It's Aloha Aina versus all these multinational corporations which are looking to benefit of the pimps in this land. So that's what it's about. They are looking for a global settlement. You know, this is nothing Kalikoa is making up. All you gotta do is check and understand our own history. This has been tried before through the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. That's why the DOI, I think the DOI came along because one day they realized, gee, we gotta help all those Kanakas down there in Hawaii. And when the DOI came last year, what happened? We kicked their ass in the community. We kicked their ass in the community. And then, oh yeah, some Hawaiians are gonna make postcards and go sign and go send on me and say, oh, but we counted more. See, I believe that people speak as Lili'u Okalani said. Right? What she said? The voice of the people is the voice of God. The voice of the people. She never said cardboard, so you sign your name and stick with me. What she said? The voice of the people, not check off the box. So you understand? So I wonder who's representing the other side. Who's trying to keep our voices quiet? I don't see the DOI coming to Hawaii again to hear from the people. We get 90 days to submit testimony. I wonder why. See, we know why. They're afraid. They fear an educated, organized, and unified people. That's what they fear. What is the purpose of NAI Puni? The purpose of NAI Puni was created to contain our people, to politically assimilate our people. Because Kanai was a failure. They fear our people. And in the bottom, let me just end by this. In 1898, as the great Chomsky said, they manufactured consent. Right? That was a fakery. 1959, they manufactured consent. And in 2015, this is what it's about, is to manufacture consent. And so this is what I'm going to end by saying here. We are in a moment in history. We are blessed. I tell you, we are blessed that our people in 1897 stood up. And our people endured and survived, and we continue to speak our language, educate ourselves. Wamauno, Maukea o Aina, Alino i Pau, Aino ke o Lane. And we are in this history. Just like when we study, wow, 1843, 1848, 1887, 1893, 1898. 2015 is the question. And so all of us here, we're here to work together. We're here, I hope you're all here for the same reason, for the betterment of our people.
So it's so important, it's really loud, that we heard from Professor Maivan Lam the impacts of the formation of a Native Hawaiian governing entity and any sort of state or federal recognition has on our international claims, and what the international community's response would likely be as we continue to push those claims. Really important. Do you want to? Yeah. Okay. Quick announcement.
Hey, aloha. Just quick announcements here. Again, we got food in the back. We also want to let people know that we have the aunties with the ku'e petitions who are outside around the corner, so check it out, find your kupuna, and I believe they're signing up a new version of the ku'e petition. Also want to remind people to sign in at the registration desk for more info so we can keep you abreast of current updates and information. Also, we're looking at trying to take these Halawai Aloha Aina into the communities to inform and educate our community. We're also going to break out a little bit later into a kind of workshop. And so we want to take this Halawai Aloha Aina into the communities in the way that OHA should have done or others should have done. That is self-determination. When the people collectively decide what we want and what we don't want. We never had the chance to do that. And I'll tell you right now, I look on Facebook, you know who's celebrating this Na'i Aupuni, this DOI rules? Robin Danner celebrating, they're happy. When they're happy, my Na'a will tell me something wrong. Also want to take the time to really mahalo our auntie Ka'iolani Lambert and her ohana for bringing the food. Our whole Halawai for being part of our planning committee and helping with the video and setting up and with that said, we'll move into our next section. Ilima will introduce. Mahalo.
Just one quick correction. We are continuing the same petition. It looks just like the ones our kupuna signed, and you will sign to join our kupuna from 1897 on the same petition. Okay, thank you.
Mahalo, Auntie. Continuing in the legacy of our ancestors. At this time, we're going to move into our next phase. I could introduce if I could introduce Hawaiian attorney Lehua Kanilao, who will be going over the DOI rules and giving us, Lehua Kanilao will be looking at further impacts of Na'i Aupuni, yeah? Lehua? Oh, Kalamai. Kilila. Lehua Kinilao, Halawai. Really want to mahalo Lehua Kinilao for coming as an attorney and offering us insight into some concerns that she has about this Na'i Aupuni process. I would also want to welcome Camille Kalama, my wahine, keeps me in line most of the time. And she's going to be offering us some insight onto just the key things with the rules. Not all of us are going to be able to go through 73 pages. I know I cannot. But she's going to summarize some of the key points of the DOI rules that we should be paying attention to. So, without further ado, Lehua, Camille, mahalo nui for your time.
Aloha everyone. I just want to say mahalo to Andre, Shane, Helani, Ilima, the organizers. I started off organizing these kind of events and I know it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time, a lot of commitment, so just gotta give them a lot of aloha. I know we've been here for a while, so I'm gonna summarize the points. Just by way of background, I'm a graduate of Hawaiian Studies. Camille and I are attorneys. I was a former attorney at Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation. Camille is at Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation now. So we're trying to look at it from that perspective. And that insight. So if you can just keep that in mind. Also, I really grew in the activism movement through Kalahui, Hawaii, so that's really my background and my lens that I'm bringing to this NAI Puni. Because for me, NAI Puni is the current state creation to co-opt sovereignty and undermine self-determination, okay? So I just want to give you a context, a little bit, I won't go too long. I want to give you two processes before to put this process in better light. First is in 1978 with the creation of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. For those of you that may not know, there was a movement by the Hawaiian community because there was the Native Hawaiian Land Trust Task Force. People were talking about ceded lands, about how do you have that trust be used to better the conditions of Native Hawaiians. And so when that movement was being done in the 70s, what happened was they clearly wanted the process to be separate from the state of Hawaii. So we had delegates who went into the State Constitutional Convention, and what did they do? They created the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, which is an agency of the state, totally against what the Hawaiian community wanted back in the 70s. So this isn't new, gang. This is just revisited over and over and over again. The other process I wanted to touch on is the SAC. They had so many names: Sovereignty Advisory Council, Hawaiian Sovereignty Advisory Commission, Hawaiian Sovereignty Elections Council. That was all created in 1993. So what would happen? Let's look at it. 1993, 100th anniversary of the overthrow. Hawaiian community is unified, as Kaleko is saying. You have a march of over 20,000 Native Hawaiians on Iolani Palace that day. I mean, I was there at the march that day. Literally, the line reached Iolani Palace and the rest of us was still at Aloha Tower waiting to go forward. And it was way deep and way wide. So just so you acknowledge that was the movement going on. So what does the state do? The state creates Sovereignty Advisory Council and the Hawaiian Sovereignty Advisory Commission in 1993. What was its purpose? Well, let's look at what their purpose was. Their purpose was to hold a plebiscite to determine the will of the indigenous Hawaiian people to restore a nation of their own choosing. Now at that time, Kalahui completely opposed this process. And why did we oppose this process? Auntie Nani was mentioning it. It's because the apology resolution came out. What did it say? Native Hawaiians, the indigenous peoples, never directly relinquish their claims to their inherent sovereignty as a people or over their national lands to the United States, either through their monarchy or through a plebiscite or referendum. So what do they want to do? Hold a plebiscite. So many of us opposed that process in 1993. In that process, just so you folks are aware, on July 15, 1996, HSEC sent out ballots to approximately 85,000 Native Hawaiians. 30,423 ballots were returned, and of those ballots, 22,294 had voted yes. So for Kalahui, we called that a victory because we had 20,000 citizens in our nation at that time. So we were like, hey, there was only 20,000, there's 85,000 that were registered that never returned their ballot. But those involved in that process just said, well, it doesn't matter, it was the majority of the ballots cast, so we can go forward. So that's the type of process that the state has created. So now we have the new version, NAI Puni, okay? And for those of the NAI Puni, I don't care what they say, you can paint them 20 different ways, it's still a creation of the state. I don't care if you're in separate organizations. Let's get real. Andre already showed Act 195. The role was created by the state of Hawaii in 2011. And then in 2013, because the numbers were so low, what we gonna do? We're gonna do this last minute amendment, and we will add everybody else who had been on any other registry, as Andre said, to increase the numbers, to inflate the numbers, to now they have over $100,000 people registered on NAI. So, what I wanted to touch on with the NAI Puni process, what I already said, it's state law, guys. I don't care if they can keep saying, well, NAI Aupuni is a separate organization. It was still created, the role itself was created by the state of Hawaii. The other point is that this idea or this notion by people of independence that, well, now suddenly, if I participate in NAI Aupuni, I can advocate for independence. All I gotta say is people just honestly get real, because let's get back to Kanai Olowalu, okay? When that was created, there was a commission and they were appointing who was gonna be on the commission. There's an at-large seat on that commission. And the commissioners wanted to put a non-resident. He's not a resident of the state of Hawaii. It was actually Suli. He was the former head of the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs. They wanted him to have a seat because they wanted the voice of Hawaiians who live outside of Hawaii to be a part of the process. And basically, the state of Hawaii law says boards and commissions, you have to be a resident of the state. So tell me how you're going to allow other opportunities, other processes, independence and whatnot, if you can't even get one commissioner who's a non-resident. Okay, so for me, the real threat, the thing that they're claiming they're doing this for is the legal challenges, right? Constantly getting challenged. 15th Amendment, that's the reason why we're doing this. We need a recognized entity. Well, let's be real, people. Our rice fee Ka'atamo, they keep trying to say, well, NAI Aupuni, we're not going to be subject to the rice fee Ka'atamo challenge. There's already a complaint filed in federal court calling for the 15th Amendment challenge and the 14th Amendment challenge. And, I don't want to get into much legalese, but when you really look at it, the fact that it was a state law and that role is limited to only those who are of Hawaiian ancestry, I don't see how it could withstand a legal challenge. Even if it's NAI Aupuni, an entity they try to claim is separate from the state of Hawaii. So all I want to leave you folks with, in my humble opinion, just coming from my na'au and my pu'uwai, is, first of all, everybody, ku'e. I encourage, if you are a delegate, please consider withdrawing your name. Another thing, I really ask you, don't sign on the roll, and look on the roll. You can go to Kanai Olowalu's website, check the website, check for your ohana, check for your friends. I was just with one friend today. I told her, hey Mary, your name is on the list. She went, what? I told her to take them off in 2013. I said, well, I think it's still on there. So bam, she's emailing them, telling them, remove my name from the list now. Go check it out, okay? Some people, I have 2 nieces I gotta talk to because they were students, just totally innocent, I bet. Just somebody coming to them, oh, you gotta sign with Hawaiian. I'm sure that's what happened. But go check for your ohana, go check for your friends and let them know. And the last thing, like what Kalahui did in '96, tell people, don't vote, burn your ballot. If they're gonna be on the list, burn your ballot, don't vote. And if we have over 100-something thousand people registered and we have a low number, does that really represent the will of our community? And Camille is going to touch on what the DOI rules is requiring in terms of numbers. And I just would encourage, if we can meet that number and get that number under, then NAI Aupuni, as far as I'm concerned, is out of basically participating in that process. So with that, I just want to turn it over.
I just want to do a quick time check. So we're running a little bit behind, and that's okay. So we're going to give Camille 10 to 15 minutes. And then I have a handout that I'll start passing around. And then after that, we're going to go over the timeline, and then we're going to start having discussions, okay? So just hang tight. Aloha, mahalo everyone for coming out tonight, and mahalo to Lipua. She's a real badass. favor of the documents that are created by this governing entity. Again, this is a vote, they call it a referendum, on the constitution or governing document that the governing entity comes up with, right? The goal is to come up with it in 40 days. So there has to be a vote. That vote has to be open to all Kanaka who are, number one, U.S. citizens, number two, can show Hawaiian descent. Everyone gets to vote, whether you're in Iopuni or not. You get to vote. They say you get to vote on these documents, okay? So which votes count? It talks about the number of votes in favor of the documents, in favor of ratifying, approving these documents. It says nothing about the number opposed. And what are the numbers? So, first of all, if there's a majority in favor, so a majority of the people who actually vote in favor of the documents or ratification, and that vote exceeds 50,000 in favor, that is considered substantial community broad-based support. Does that mean, yes, they will recognize this entity? No, not necessarily. They say that. It may. Does that mean they won't if it's less than 50,000? No, it doesn't say that either. It does say that of those 50,000 votes, at least 15,000 have to be affirmative votes by Hawaiian Homes Commission Act eligible beneficiaries. So they want to make sure that, number one, there's broad-based support in the overall community, and then they're very focused on Hawaiian Homes Commission Act beneficiaries. Now, on the flip side, if the number of votes in favor of ratification, again, is below 60%, okay, so maybe it's a majority, but maybe it's 55% of the people that vote. But if that number is less than 30,000 in favor of ratification, then that will be a presumption, they say, that there isn't broad-based community support. Again, is that a clear line? If it's less than 30,000, does that mean they won't recognize the government? No, it doesn't say that either. In that case, there has to be, if they see less than 9,000 votes by Hawaiian Homes Commission Act beneficiaries, then that will also show a lack of broad-based support by that particular group of Native Hawaiians. So, it's confusing. But basically, all we need to do is look back at how they treated the comments in favor and against this rule. I went back 2 times to look at what they said. They said there was 5,100 written comments. 5,164 written, by the deadline. 5,164 comments total. About 2,500 were form cards. And then they say there were other comments by all these people. It doesn't say how many comments were oral, doesn't say how many comments were opposed. In fact, in looking at it, it doesn't say how many were in support. It doesn't say a number. It just says, overall they concluded that a majority supported, going forward with the rule. So if we just look at how they treated those numbers, that really concerns me about how they're going to treat numbers that come out in support or in against ratifying those documents. And so, right, we can't, essentially nothing is crystal clear by this. But know that this is not final. They're asking for comments on those numbers, whether or not that's a good number to go by. Meaning, there's already been comments that 50,000, no way, we're not going to get that much, you got to lower it. So it could be lowered. I doubt that it's going to go higher. That could change. They're also asking for comments about how you prove your ancestry, those types of things. And so, all I would say is that if you're strategizing on, what do you do? What do you do if you don't agree with this? What do you do if you want to oppose this? Think really carefully. It doesn't look like votes in opposition count. That's what it looks like to me. And that, we can't rely on what it says today. There will be changes. Even then, I wouldn't rely on what it says because it's all
a presumption or possibly, or we may do this. So nothing is set in stone. But again, this is the end goal. So Na'i Puni, what happens if this rule doesn't pass? Does anything happen to Hawaiian homes? Nope, nothing. It says it in there. If the rule doesn't pass, does that mean Na'i Puni won't have the ability to settle, to do a global settlement with the state? Nope. Right. So, I think it's just something to pay attention to, something to keep in mind and looking forward and looking at both of these things. They're both working at different paces, and in the end of it, I think there'll be a lot of thought given to what types of strategies come out, but yeah, I just think pay attention. Things are happening. Mahalo.
So basically, if we vote, I don't know if we vote for or against, it seems like the rules aren't even clear how they're going to make a determination. That doesn't sound like self-determination to me if we don't even know how our votes are going to be counted and how it's going to affect the outcome. So we really got to pay attention. Yeah, we're going to have to continue to come together as a Aloha and discuss this and strategize how we're going to respond to this. It seems like it's so ambiguous that it's designed to ensure that they can always make the outcome what they want it to be. Stand by for our next presentation.
Okay, I'm just going to set this up a little bit and then hand it over to Kealani and Shane. But what we're going to do now, we've had a lot of analysis, yeah, everybody kind of overloaded, we got a lot to process and think about. So what we want to do now is start thinking about how do we move forward with this and how do we move forward building resistance and protest around this. And so one thing that we need to do is look at the timeline, because there's a number of significant periods that we're moving into right now until the end of the AHA. And so I asked that definitely go get your food and stuff like that, but please still keep it down. We're still doing presentations here. It's the last presentation. We're going to break out and we want to know what you guys have to think and what your ideas are for action, analysis, and moving forward with this issue. Okay.
Okay, hello, hi, I'm Kealani Sonora Pale. This is my husband, Shane Pale. What we want to give you guys is some idea of what's coming up and some tools that you guys can have to do something right now to protest this process. It's important to protest. It's important to say, I do not agree with this process, and be vocal and visual against this process. It's very important. So we kind of divided it up into phases. So phase 1 is when we start disenrollment. We only have to October 15th to disenroll. And so we have a very short timeline. Right now, we have disenrollment forms right there on that table. We will collect it and mail it for you. You can put it in the box. There's an envelope so you can protect your private information. Go and disenroll if you know you're on the list. You can check on your phone, look on the internet, and disenroll now. Okay, so 80% of our people are not on that list. So when we disenroll, we're actually standing with our kupuna and with the majority of our people. We also have a protest Na'i Puni petition that we can send to you. We need you to sign up, put your email, we can give you that information. And we also want some help. If any of you would like to host a Halawai Aloha Aina, we're going to start doing that in the communities, as Andre said. Okay. So, two things that we can do this week, and you guys did already, one thing already, you guys attended this meeting. Today is our Aloha Aina Halawai. And so, all of you are here because all of us concerned about what's going on, what could happen to us and our kids and our family. Up until October 15th, we have like maybe about a week to get our names off the roll. So that's a strategy now. That's something you can do right now. You can sign the petition. And all of this information I want to share with you guys is going to be on the Protest NAI Puni website. It's protest.naiaupuni.wordpress.com. Okay, next one. Phase 2 is from October 15th to November 31st. And some things that you can do, host a Halawai Aloha Aina. We're going to start writing up a form letter. It's really complicated because they're asking for specifics. It needs to be substantial. And so it's taking some time, but we will have a form letter ready that you can use or you can sign and send it to the DOI. And that will be on our website as well. Boycott the elections, as Keawekane-Stafford said. And protest. You can do demonstrations. We're going to have signs that you can download off of the website and you can take with you when you go to a march, when you go to any kind of forum. You need to have your voice be heard. And you can sign the petition. So October 18th, there is an Aloha Aina Unity March in Maui. This is a great opportunity. I'm not an organizer of this march, but this is a great opportunity to show, to be vocal and to say, hey, I protest this process. Because you can be visual, you can hold a sign, and there's going to be a lot of Hawaiians. October 20th, there's a hearing on the motion against NAI Puni at the courthouse, 9:30 a.m. This is in regards to the lawsuit that's been filed against this process. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna have a hearing and they're gonna decide, not that day, but they're gonna decide whether or not they're gonna allow this process to go forward. So if you want more information, you can attend the hearing. It's open to the public. October 22nd, there is a forum at the UHM Law School, 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. This is an unbalanced forum because it's very pro-NAI Puni on this forum. Again, this is an opportunity to have your voice be heard, make a sign, ask questions. We need to start being vocal and out there about where we stand as Hawaiians. October 22nd, the DOI public teleconference meeting, 8 a.m. October 26th, I'm sorry. The DOI public teleconference meeting, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's on the DOI website, and we'll have it on our website as well. It's open to the public. All of you can call in. It's a teleconference. And you're gonna need a passport too. October 27th, the DOI teleconference consultation with Native Hawaiian organizations. These are only organizations that are on that list that the DOI published can participate in this teleconference. So if you know you're on the list, if your organization is on there, this is your opportunity to say something as well. Can go next one. Okay. Oh yeah, November 1st. The ballots will be sent out to those on the roll. Okay, and November 1st is when we should know the court ruling on the court case, on the lawsuit. We should know by then if this process will go forward or not. And it's also the day they're going to send out the ballots as well. So as our attorney, like what Keawekane-Stafford said, do not participate in the elections. November 4th, the DOI teleconference tribal consultation. So they're basically, the Department of Interior is allowing federally recognized Native American tribes to comment on the DOI rules. they can participate in this. And early November, Na'i Aupuni voting begins. There is a big civic clubs meeting on Maui, November 8th to the 15th. And I don't know if any of you are in the civic clubs, but you really need to go back to your civic club and let them know that this process is hewa. And we need to be vocal and visual in terms of protesting. November 30th, the Na'i Aupuni voting ends. And November 31st, the election results are announced publicly. So it's coming fast. We don't have much time. And this process is just being railroaded. And basically we're being forced to accept it. Okay. So phase 3, reassess and rejuice. So December to January, we can assess the elections, reassess strategies, DOI commentary final push. December 30th is the deadline for the for comments, for you to mail in. You can email your comments as well. So December 30th is that deadline. And then we can start strategizing about creative actions that we can do to protest this process. And again, sign the Na'i Aupuni protest petition, because what we're planning to do is submit that to the DOI as proof that, hey, our people do not support this process. Okay, so December 28th is the deadline for commentary on DOI rules. Okay. Okay, one thing.
Okay, we put this last part on here. So phase 4, we'd be looking at the actual AHA. And we put up here, don't show all your cards at once. In other words, all of these phases, we gotta reassess and re-strategize, right? So we're not here to say what the plan is for everyone, but these are ways that we can be looking at these different periods. Right now, enrollment is the issue, and the deadline is October 15th. We could possibly anticipate a surge out of those who are so kanabua and kind of scared and don't know what to do, and just in case they're gonna go enroll this past week. So let's get this message out there. Stand with the people. Do not enroll, and in fact disenroll, and come back to this side. And then the next phase, let's start organizing, hosting these meetings all around our islands. This is just to summarize what Halawai just went through. Organizing, building education and analysis across the Aina, bringing in these people to help educate our communities and our families, and thinking about other strategies. And then after the elections are done, we need to see who's in there. We need to see who got elected and who didn't. And we need to reassess strategies at that point and keep the momentum going, create creative actions. The beauty about Mauna Kea is that nobody waited for permission to get out there on the road and do their thing and hold their signs and do their, their march or this or that. It's been a very decentralized, nobody waiting for permission to stand up for Mauna Kea, and that's the same thing that's got to happen here. And there's so much talent and so much skills in our lahui. We can take it upon ourselves to look at these things and get very creative and keep morale up, because they got a lot more power, they got a lot more money than we do, and we have to be creative and we have to utilize what we got in our people to keep things moving. And then again, we reassess at this point, at the point of the AHA. So this is a way for us to look at it, okay, at the timelines. And so what we want to do now is we want to hear what their ideas are for actions, what their ideas are for how this process, how self-determination should look like, what say you wish you would have had in this. What we're going to do right now is we're going to break out into 5 groups, and we have facilitators, community leaders in each group, and students helping to note take. And we're going to do now what OHA should have done from the very beginning. And we're going to start soliciting community input and building that Ike and that Manoa together and start moving forward as a united people. So let me explain how this is going to go. We're going to do it very sort of, informally. So on the stairs, we have sort of the stairs group, and Noilani Goodyear Kaupua is going to be the facilitator for that group. So you folks will kind of gather together, and all the facilitators have some guiding questions to get the conversation going, okay? And then the back wall folks and these kind of side folks, anybody kind of outside of the halau, if you guys can go right beyond the stairs, and Kalekoa is going to facilitate that group, okay? So all of the stairs can come maybe together towards the right. All of the back wall side lingerers go just beyond the stairs where there's light, and Kalekoa will facilitate over there. And then we'll have this side can stay together and kind of move up here. And Kaho'okahi, can you actually facilitate this group over here? Okay, mahalo. And then we're going to split up maybe these first 3 rows, and then these lingering folks and whoever's out here, we're going to come to the front together. We can move our chairs around, kind of circle up, get together, start talking. And Kahele Duklo, where are you? She will facilitate this group. And then the last group is this back area. You guys just stay right back in this area, but kind of turn your chairs around to talk stories. And Halawai and Shane are going to come back and facilitate this group. And then we have some students that are going to help note take. So student note takers, find a group. And if there's already a note taker there, then you're good. Just join it and share your Manoa. Yeah, you're good. So one last time, all the stairs, we're ready.
I think we stay united, like we stay united.
That side. Yeah, that side.
Okay.
Turn this off then. Turn them off.
You'll go call guys.